Okay, let's talk about whiskey competitions. You know, the San Francisco World Spirits, the International Wine and Spirits Competition, and these sort of things, the Ascot Awards. Do these matter to you? Or do you just don't even care about that and you drink what you like, or you watch YouTube and get good recommendations? So where do you get when you want to try a new whiskey, where do you find it at? Just YouTube? Or do you look at those competitions as well? I don't scour the results of these competitions, but the International Wine and Spirits Competition has been on my kind of radar the past couple of years, and I have found some pretty great whiskeys from the results from that competition. And here is the 2024, the highest scoring bourbon from the International Wine and Spirits Competition, the Kentucky Peerless Toasted Bourbon. Let's do a little intro and then get to it. Guys, I'm Captain Mike. This is Whiskey and Literature, and I do whiskey and book reviews. And tonight today, early afternoon, it is whiskey. And if you're wondering what's going on here, those of you who've seen some of my recent videos, my house is a shell. Hurricane Helene, basically 3 feet of water inside my house. The house has been demoed down to a concrete slab and block walls and studs inside the house. We have nothing else in here. I have some shelves as we kind of figure out what we're going to do with the house. This is going to be my whiskey studio, I guess, for the next little while. Maybe I'll move around the house and do it in different places. And hopefully the echo isn't too bad, but it is what it is. You know, I've talked to people who have been in Kentucky and Louisville, where they're from, and they never heard of Kentucky Peerless. I've been to Kentucky now 5 times and doing distillery tours, Bourbon Trail kind of stuff. I've done the tour and tasting at Kentucky Peerless twice, and I do recommend it. It's a nice change from the big monster distilleries that you can go to. I really enjoyed doing the distillery tour there both times that I did it. It's unique enough. And their story is, like all the distillery stories, it's something that you can listen to and enjoy for what it is. And they do some things differently than most of the other distilleries, as all the distilleries do say that they do different stuff than all the other distilleries. But, it is true in this case, I think. And so it was good to see. So I do recommend, and it's nice because it's in Louisville. Like one day we did a Kentucky Peerless, Old Forester, and Angel's Envy in the same day. And we just walked from one to the other. And that was a lot, but it's doable. I have my favorite distilleries. I like High West. I like Jim Beam. I'm a Jack Daniel's fan. 1792. I do Wild Turkey. Heck yes. I like these distilleries. And to be fair, compared to Kentucky Peerless, I have had many, many more bottles of Jack Daniel's and Jim Beam, and certainly High West than I have of different Kentucky Peerless. But of all the Kentucky Peerless bottles that I've owned and the ones that I've had in the tasting at the distillery, they've all been pretty good bottles. I mean, really good bottles. And I've been pretty happy with them. Compared to say, again, High West and Jim Beam, occasionally you run across a Jim Beam product that you're like, really? Devil's Cut. Occasionally the Booker's or the Little Book or whatever falls a little flat for you. But overall, I do like those distilleries, though Kentucky Peerless is one of the few ones, though the scale is much smaller, that I've enjoyed everything I've had from them. And I've only had a couple of pours of this toasted bourbon, but it meets and exceeds my expectations. And this was in the 2024 International Wine and Spirits Competition. Almost 500 bottles that they were tasting, and of those 500, 430 received medals, and 30 of those received gold medals, and 4 of those received outstanding golds. So, and actually a different Kentucky Peerless took the bourbon trophy, and that's their high rye bourbon, which I haven't tried. If you have and have thoughts on it, feel free to let us know. But their toasted bourbon, it was the highest scoring bourbon in the competition. So that is pretty great. So I went to Kentucky in September, just last month. This was on my hit list, one of the bottles that I wanted to get. And I went into a couple of stores and they were like, oh yeah, they sold out. And I was like, crap. But I called the distillery and they had some there, and so I picked one up. So let's drop a little bit of Bourbon 101 before we get to the drink. You might be wondering, what is the difference between a toasted bourbon or a whiskey and a double oak whiskey? This is a double oak bourbon from Kentucky Peerless. This is their toasted from Kentucky Peerless. And in my mind, I always thought they were kind of the same, and they are kind of the same. Double oak, what's the definition? Well, there is no definition. It's really how you want to do it. And a lot of distilleries that say they have, double barrels, or they have double oak, or they're toasted, oftentimes they mean kind of the same thing. In this instance, what Kentucky Peerless has done for their bourbon is they put it in a barrel, they age it, and to taste, they say, they don't release the ages of their whiskeys. They age it to taste, and then they put it in a new charred toasted oak barrel and finish it in that. And that's what they're defining as a double oak. But I believe that that second barrel is the exact same char and toast level as the first one. For their toasted bourbon, what they do is they age it in that char 3, I believe, char 3 and toasted barrel to taste. And then they take that and they put it in a toasted no char barrel to finish it. Some distilleries like Woodford Reserve, they have their double oak, which I think is kind of the standard. I'm not saying it's the best double oak that's out there, but it is the standard, I think, with which I judge all other double oaks. Probably because it was the first double oak that I ever had, and it's always out there. You can always buy a couple bottles. It's relatively affordable, 51 bucks, I believe, for 750 of the Woodford Reserve. So I kind of judge all bottles against that as kind of this standard. So they age a Woodford Reserve in a charred toasted barrel, and then their double oak is a, I believe, heavily toasted and lightly charred barrel. So different distilleries do it different ways. It's all according to taste, and it does change the whiskey. Let's talk about Kentucky Peerless specifically and about this bottle. So Kentucky Peerless, what they do a little different. First of all, they do use a sweet mash. Their bottles are non-chill filtered. And in the 50s, I can't remember which year exactly, they barrel entry proof. So they distill the whiskey, then they put it in the barrel. It used to be you could only do it at 110. Then they raised that to 125. But Kentucky Peerless, back in the day when they were first founded, pre-prohibition, their founder thought 107 proof as a barrel entry proof was the best proof. So when Kentucky Peerless got their license again and they started distilling, they stuck with that 107 proof. So they put it in the barrel and it ages. That's why their barrel proof or batch proof whiskey is always a lower proof. The double oak is a single barrel proof, and it's 107.2 proof. They're toasted, it is a batch, this is batch 2, and it's 109.4 proof. So, and it does say barrel proof, but it is a batch, so it's more than one barrel, but it's still, what that does is the lower barrel entry proof allows for less dilution when it goes into the barrel. So that's a good thing for us. And I'm not gonna get into the economics and how that affects the distilleries and all that sort of stuff, but I believe Maker's Mark is 110, but for the most part, most of the big distilleries have gone to 125 for their barrel entry proof. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so overall, I really enjoyed Kentucky Peerless. Let's do the specs and stats for this and then get it. Again, this is batch 2. It's toasted 109.4 proof, 54.7 ABV. Non-chill filtered, sweet mash, barrel proof, no water added. These run $129 at the distillery. And I have realized that Kentucky Peerless, I think even more than other distilleries, say Jim Beam, they do really raise their prices at the distillery. So if you can find these bottles somewhere besides the distillery, you're usually better off buying them there, but can you find them anywhere else? Now this double oak I did find here locally, both the double oak bourbon and the double oak rye, and it was significantly cheaper than the bottles that I purchased in Kentucky. But you know, it just happened to run across those. They're not on the shelves typically outside of the distillery, at least not here in the Tampa Bay area. So you're gonna pay a premium if you buy a distillery. Again, a little bourbon 101 knowledge. If you don't know about the 3-tier system, when you buy a bottle at the distillery, you're not buying it technically from the distillery. The distillery has sold those bottles to a distributor who has sold them to the store at the distillery, and that's what you're buying it for. So it still has gone through that distributor system. You're not actually buying it, and that is the law with very, very, very few exceptions in the United States. So oftentimes guys wonder, why don't you get the best deal at the distilleries? And that's why you're still going through the 3-tier system. But guys, we're here for the whiskey. So let's get to it. Kentucky Peerless Distilling Toasted Bourbon Batch 2. Cheers. Windows are open. I don't have the AC going. It's a little warm in here. And there's an ice cream truck went by recently. There's some planes going by. I hear birds and construction, so hopefully the audio isn't too bad. I've been trying to take a quick sip first to kind of just waken everything up and then get to the nose. I've had this sitting in the glass for, man, at least 20 minutes, maybe even half an hour, as I've been kind of just prepping for the video. But that first sip doesn't really count, but it's just nice and creamy. It's very oaky. It is, it's just a bourbon. I really enjoy that just quick sip, but it's a real rich nose. 109 proof is really great. I think that is a nice level. You're not getting blown away by the proof. I always like, I don't always, but I definitely like whiskeys at 109 proof. Little alcohol there, I went in too deep. Just smells rich. Can you smell creamy? Just smells like, yeah, rich is the good word, I guess. Definitely just some caramel. Maybe it's more vanilla than on the double oak. And to be fair, I did have the double oak and the toasted a couple nights ago. Just kind of had both pours. I was just kind of sipping on them. And I will say their profiles are very, very similar. I think there's a little more vanilla and sweetness in the toasted than there is in the double oak. And that's there, definitely, it's like a higher vanilla. But still those nice bourbon notes, richness and sweetness. Maybe a little nuttiness, but nothing like, say, a Jim Beam product. It's not to that level at all. Just a hint of it, but very, very nice. I know I have some friends who are big fans of the Kentucky Peerless Double Oak, and so I'm really happy to have that. I also have the Double Oak Rye, which is, like I said, everything I've had from Kentucky Peerless has been pretty spot on. It's initially sweet at first. You have that vanilla component, and then there's this little spice just kind of brings it through. It's not maybe just a hint of cinnamon. It's a really nice palate. It's a bit creamy. I'll say rich on the nose, and I'll go ahead and go with creamy on the palate here. We don't know what the mash bill is. Kentucky Peerless. I asked during the distillery tours, and they don't release their mash bills for whatever reason. I would really like to get a bottle of that high rye bourbon, again, which took the gold trophy at the International Wine and Spirits competition this year. I would love to have that. Maybe when I go back to Kentucky, if I can find myself a bottle, that would be really nice to add to the Kentucky Peerless collection. And I do have I'm wearing the damn hat today. This is my Kentucky Peerless hat from the distillery. I feel like it's a little nuttier on the palate than on the nose. It kind of shines through a little bit more, but that spice is just still coming through. It's a little bit of oak spice, some cinnamon, not really the baking spice of what you expect with a rye, but I think it's just more from the oak, some oak spices coming through. I also found a couple times recently as I drink a whiskey and even film a video, 10 minutes later, as I'm going and doing something else, I'll have some flavors still popping in my mouth. And that's always fun and exciting. It doesn't help in the videos when it does it 10 minutes after the video. I have a nice cross breeze in here, but I'm still sweating. My air conditioner does work, but I'm afraid it's gonna catch fire or something, so I don't even turn it on in the house. It's leaving me with some more of that spice. It's kind of subduing the sweetness as it's just kind of marinating on my palate there. The sweetness is kind of subdued, and I just have just a nice gentle spice level just warming my mouth. Didn't really get any warming down. You know, it's only 109 proof, which is really, really nice. Guys, I think Kentucky Peerless has another winner with this, and whether or not you go or you pay attention to the whiskey competitions, I think I've gotten some pretty good whiskeys looking at that, especially the winners, even the Whiskey Advocate magazine and their top 10 list for the year. I am a fan of those. I do find like this, like I would not have been laser focused on getting this toasted bourbon if it hadn't been for realizing that it won the spirits competition. So I've never really had a whiskey that I purchased from one of those that I've been like, I totally disagree with the, you know, the trophy or whatever, or that this was a good whiskey or a whiskey of the year. Maybe I don't think it's the whiskey of the year, but I've always thought it's at least a really, really good whiskey. And I could name quite a few of those, the Hemingway Signature Rye, the Shibui, and others. I mean, the Glenglassaugh Sand End, I believe it was. You know, these I think are pretty good whiskeys, and I've really enjoyed them. So I recommend maybe don't focus on those things, but don't dismiss those competitions either. What I'm really saying is, if you see a bottle of this on the shelf, get it. You know, $100, certainly. I would certainly pay $100 for this. It just has a next level above, say, the Woodford Reserve Double Oak. Certainly, you know, is it twice as good? You have to be the judge of that, but it's certainly worthy of having on your shelf. At $100, certainly, 129, you know, that's up to you. Certainly I paid that, and I'm happy to do so. All right, my guys, thanks for watching. If you have any ideas or comments, feel free to drop them below. If you've enjoyed the video, like it, subscribe to see more of my content. I do both book and whiskey reviews. But for now, my friends, you know what to do. I hope you're reading something good and drinking something great. And wear that damn hat. Cheers.